This is the craziest episode of Breaking Bad. Walter, Jesse, and Mike attempt to steal materials for their contraband by robbing a moving train. To others, this would seem like an impossible task, but for the highly intelligent Walter, this silent theft is as simple as reaching into a bag. They prepare for the heist the day before. After careful measurement, they find the perfect location for their operation. Mike is responsible for observing the surroundings, while Walter, as the commander-in-chief, oversees the entire operation. First, they bury 2 large empty barrels in a dugout pit and fill one of them with water. Due to a lack of manpower, they enlist the help of Todd from the pest control company. Todd is curious and asks Walter why he'd fill a bucket with water if he's stealing methylamine. Walter says it's Jesse's idea and asks Jesse to explain. Jesse explains that the train is weighed before unloading, and if the weight is different, they will know the methylamine was stolen. Leading to an investigation, Jesse emphasizes that stealing methylamine from a train is a serious crime. He repeatedly stresses that no one else can know about this. Todd nods, unbeknownst to him. This sets up a huge plot twist later. Walter, a Nobel Prize-winning chemist, can't resist educating Todd. He explains that methylamine is a liquid that can dissolve in water and is slightly less dense than water. If they want to steal 1,000 gallons of methylamine, they need to replace it with about 900 gallons of water, precisely 924 gallons, considering spillage and residue in the pipes. Walter insists on pumping in 920 gallons of water.
Yeah, but won't they figure out they got robbed anyway on account of getting watered down meth?
Well, out of 24,000 gallons, it'll only amount to about 4% dilution, so. But yes, you're right. They will notice. At which point, they will blame China for sending a marginally weaker batch.
Damn, you guys thought of everything.
Todd begins to argue with Walter. This turns Todd into a loyal fan of Walter. The question is, how did they get this information? It all started a day earlier, when Jesse met Lydia to exchange the methylamine. Lydia found that the DEA had placed trackers on the barrels, so Walter and his team temporarily had no methylamine. Mike, knowing Lydia, suspected it was a trick orchestrated by her. This evil woman had already killed 2 of his men, so Mike threatened to kill Lydia immediately, but Walter and Jesse persuaded him otherwise. They decided to test Lydia. This picks up the cliffhanger from the last episode left by Jesse.
Say, I liked your idea. It's pretty, I think it's the way to go.
The plan begins. Walter goes to Hank's office, pretending to complain. Hank knows Walter has been having issues with Skylar, so Walter's visit seems natural. Walter's acting skills kick in.
Skylar doesn't love me anymore. And I don't know what to do, Hank. I don't. She says that I'm a bad influence on the kids. Yeah, not good for them. Oh, Jesus, Walt.
Seeing Walter cry, Hank kindly closes all the blinds to prevent his colleagues from seeing. To comfort Walter, Hank goes to make coffee, giving Walter some alone time. Walter immediately tampers with Hank's computer and pulls out a prepared bugging device. This was Walter's real purpose for visiting Hank. As Walter installs the bug in a picture frame, Hank suddenly returns with the coffee. Walter, quick on his feet, starts admiring a photo of Hank and Marie.
You know, you 2 are really great together.
The scene shifts to Lydia being brought into a small dark room.
I can't be here. My daughter, my little girl. Home soon. What are you doing? Mike, my daughter.
Shut up!
Mike hands Lydia a script, instructing her to call Hank and read it verbatim, threatening her with death if she tries any tricks. Lydia must not show any signs of fear. Through their conversation, Hank reveals he doesn't know about the trackers on the methylamine barrels and tells Lydia to set the barrels aside until he can investigate. Hank then hangs up.
Hey, Tommy, come here, would you?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
You don't know anything about GPS trackers on a barrel, do you? Matter with Houston I'm talking about.
No, nobody from my team planning anything. Why?
I don't know. Figured as much. Alright, thanks.
When they hear Hank and Steven's conversation through the bug, Lydia keeps begging Mike and the others to spare her, insisting that she didn't do it. Mike's suspicion is confirmed. Walter offers Lydia a chance to live, but she fails to seize it, not even if Jesse was against it, because the vote is now 2-1, just as Lydia makes her final struggle before death. The bug in Hank's office suddenly picks up sound again.
Hey, Errol. Please tell me you his lame brain has put a GPS tracker on the outside of a barrel of one earmarked for the medical warehouse in Houston.
Who's asking? Did someone find him?
Jesus, are you shitting me? Since when you put a GPS tracker on the outside of a barrel?
We didn't have time to go in there with hazard suits, Hank. They were about to ship. We epoxied them to the bottom. They were well hidden. I just...
Oh, really? Well, not well hidden enough. How many barrels you tag?
All of them. All the ones headed to that warehouse, anyway.
Christ. All right, well, sit tight. Let me figure out a plan.
When they heard this dialogue, all their previous plans were overturned. It seems they almost killed their benefactor. If Lydia hadn't found the tracker, the DEA might have busted their hideout by now. Even though Lydia didn't lie this time, Mike still insists on killing her. He reveals that Lydia hired someone to kill him, stating that if they let her live, she will betray them at the first opportunity. Hearing this, Jesse's impression of Lydia worsens significantly, seeing that the two are about to be convinced by Mike. Lydia, driven by a strong survival instinct, manages to save her life again.
You still need to me, don't you, right?
You can't even get us a single barrel.
Who said anything about barrels? I'm talking about an ocean of this stuff.
Hearing this huge temptation, they begin a new round of negotiations. Lydia reveals that every Wednesday, a train full of oil pipes departs from Guangzhou, China. Using her position, she provides specific details about the train. Furthermore, the train passes through an area with no signal coverage, allowing you to stop the train and seize the methylamine. However, they are deeply conflicted about whether to kill the train engineer. To their surprise, the vicious Lydia looks down on them for this.
Give me a break. You guys were gonna murder me. I thought you were professionals.
Although Lydia provides crucial information, Walter and Mike have a disagreement again. Mike doesn't want to kill innocent people during the heist, but nothing can stop Walter now. While the two are arguing, Jesse, who is on the sidelines, has his wits about him.
We can rip off that train, and no one ever knows it got robbed.
It is Jesse's insight that leads to the meticulous plan at the beginning. The next day, they wait by the tracks early in the morning for the train to arrive. To force the train to stop, they enlist Saul's sidekick QB to stage a truck breakdown. Mike watches through binoculars. Everything is ready, and the train arrives on schedule. Walter and the others hide under the bridge to avoid being seen by the conductor. Soon, the conductor spots the broken-down truck ahead and hastily applies the emergency brakes. The train successfully stops in front of the truck. Seeing the train has stopped, Walter and his team quickly spring into action. They move like well-trained firefighters racing against the clock. Following Mike's signal, Jesse and Todd rush towards the train with hoses. Meanwhile, QB continues to stall the train engineer, asking for help with the truck's engine. Quickly, Jesse connects the hose from underneath, and Todd inserts the other end into the tank. Everything proceeds smoothly. Walter starts the gas engine to pump water in. As expected, something unexpected is about to happen. While the train driver was worried, a giant pickup truck came into the distance. QB hurriedly pretends to ask for help, asking if the driver knows anything about truck engines. Kind pickup driver says, "I don't know anything about engines, but I can push your car off the tracks first." QB pretends to protest, saying he doesn't want the driver to damage his truck, but he can't resist the urging of the two train engineers. Eventually, QB reluctantly accepts the help. Mike, watching from a distance, sees the unexpected situation and quickly alerts Walter to evacuate the train immediately. But the methylamine has not yet reached the amount they want, and the greedy Walter still won't stop. The train engineer is ready to start the train. Jesse, under the train, is extremely anxious as they are still short of the target amount. Jesse quickly fixes the hose connection, and Todd swiftly closes the lid on top. Jesse has no time to escape and lies flat, while Todd jumps off just as the train starts moving. Thus, an eventful yet successful heist is completed. As they celebrate this victory, they suddenly notice a young boy in the distance staring at them. He awkwardly waves at them, and they awkwardly look back at him. Before the operation, Jesse repeatedly emphasized to Todd that no one should know about this. Todd, remembering Jesse's instructions, immediately pulls out a gun and kills the boy.
No! No!
We all know that children are Jesse's Achilles heel because a child disrupted his punishment of the Spudge couple. Because of a child, he dared to argue under Gus's intense pressure. Because of a child, he risked his life to kill Gus's henchman. Because of a child, Jesse changed his mind and helped Walter get rid of Gus. Now, another innocent child has died in front of Jesse. What will he do this time? Never let your child wander alone, or they might end up in a dangerous situation. Just a moment ago, the little boy had wandered off to the countryside to play and found a tarantula. Delighted, He put the tarantula in a jar, but what the boy didn't realize was that he had seen something he shouldn't have, and he paid for it with his life. Although this incident deeply affected Jesse, the reality couldn't be changed. To avoid being discovered, they had to destroy the boy's body. Afterward, Todd desperately tried to justify his actions, claiming he did it for everyone's sake. Walter told Todd to step aside for a moment. They discussed how to deal with Todd. Walter proposed 3 options. The first was to fire Todd, but since he knew too many secrets, they would have to pay him a significant hush money. The second option was to kill Todd, but none of them wanted to see another death. The third option was to keep Todd around as a gopher, which would make it easier to control him. Walter and Mike both chose the third option, and Jesse had no strength to argue. Mike came out and warned Todd, "If you ever bring a gun to an operation again without permission, you'll find out what real trouble is." Everyone feels bad about killing an innocent kid. However, Todd showed no remorse and even kept the boy's tarantula. He was truly a monster in human skin. The next day, while Mike was at the park with his granddaughter Kaylee, DEA agents were watching him from a distance. Mike wrote a note and placed it under a trash can, then left with Kaylee. Steven, suspecting that Mike was exchanging information, had a colleague film the scene while he went to retrieve the note. But when he got it, he found it contained nothing but insults. Mike had already noticed the DEA watching him. At home, Mike used his laptop to listen to recordings from Hank's office, confirming Steven's report to Hank about him. As the saying goes, know thy enemy and win 100 battles. Meanwhile, with the methylamine in hand, Walter and Jesse continued producing their contraband as usual. Just as Jesse was about to turn off the TV and start working, the screen switched to news about the missing boy they had killed. Seeing this, Jesse sank into deep guilt again. Walter, understanding Jesse's mindset, quickly turned off the TV and urged him to forget the past and look to the future. He promised Jesse that nothing like this would ever happen again. Seeing that Jesse was too distraught to work, Walter kindly let him leave early. As Jesse changed his clothes to go home, he suddenly heard Walter whistling casually, showing no guilt over the boy's death. Jesse realized that Walter had changed. He was no longer the kind and gentle man he once was. Later that evening, when Walter went to the warehouse to drop off supplies, he ran into Mike and Jesse there. Walter thought they were there to work overtime, but it turned out Mike was there to discuss ending their partnership. Mike had realized that the DEA was closing in on him, and it was only a matter of time before he got caught. He was planning to flee. Walter didn't try to stop Mike, as they often had disagreements. Just as Walter was about to assign Jesse to take over Mike's responsibilities, Jesse unexpectedly announced his resignation as well. Hearing this, Walter immediately flew into a rage. He pointed his finger at Jesse and yelled, "We just risked everything to get 1,000 gallons of methylamine, which can be converted into $300 million, and now you're quitting? Have you lost your mind?" Despite Walter's attempts to persuade him, Jesse remained unmoved. It turned out that he and Mike had already planned to sell their share of the methylamine. Mike had already found a buyer, and both he and Jesse could each walk away with $5 million. Jesse suggested to Walter that he could sell his share of the methylamine and live a peaceful life, but Walter refused to give up the opportunity to get rich for such a small profit. Jesse questioned Walter,
Are we in the or the money business?
Walter had long forgotten his original goal of earning $737,000. When the scene changes, Mike takes Jesse to the countryside to talk business. Declan, based on the amount of methylamine Mike and Jesse were selling, figured out they were only selling 2/3 of it. To monopolize the market, Declan demanded they sell all of the methylamine to him, although Mike was in a difficult situation. But after all, the money is in other people's hands, and he initiated the transaction with Declan. Mike had no choice but to compromise. Then Jesse contacted Walter, trying to persuade him to join them in selling the methylamine. Since no one was home, Walter invited Jesse to his house. Jesse stated his purpose for coming, but it was clear Walter had no intention of selling his share of the methylamine. No matter how much Jesse tried to persuade him, Walter stubbornly refused. Their values had clearly diverged significantly by this point. Walter brought up the example of when he sold his shares in Gray Matter Technologies. He was one of the company's founders, and even the name contained part of his own name, but for various reasons, he chose to leave. Later, Gray Matter went public and was now worth billions, something he regretted deeply for the rest of his life. He couldn't let a similar situation happen again and declared that he would use the methylamine to build his own empire.
Jesse, you asked me if I was in the money business. Neither. I'm in the empire business.
Apparently Jesse's not that ambitious. At that moment, Skylar suddenly came home, making Jesse extremely awkward. He hurriedly stood up to leave. Their last meeting had been in season 1 when Skylar, pregnant and assuming Walter was buying contraband from Jesse, confronted him and forbade him from selling to Walter. At that time, Jesse was also dealing with Emilio's body. Knowing how Skylar viewed him, Jesse quickly found an excuse to leave, but Walter forced him to stay for dinner. Walter acted like a tyrant whose words could not be contradicted. Skylar, however, was not one to be trifled with, and she gave Walter no face during dinner. Embarrassed, Jesse struggled to find a topic of conversation.
So hey, how's business? The car wash. Mr. White said it's going really well. It's like you're a great manager.
He did, huh?
Yeah, he says you got it running like a machine, like well oiled. Yeah.
Did you also tell him about my affair?
At this point, Jesse no longer dared to speak, but only embarrassed to keep drinking water.
Be excused.
Walter informed Jesse that Skylar had sent the kids to Marie's house and that their marriage was on the rocks. Skylar was just waiting for his cancer to return and for him to die.
This business is all I have left now, and you want to take it away from me.
Clearly, Jesse couldn't convince Walter. After Jesse left, Walter hurried to the warehouse to deal with the methylamine early. However, the experienced Mike was already waiting for him, having predicted Walter's move. To ensure the safety of all the methylamine, Mike decided to restrain Walter and forcibly sell his share. The two spent the night in the warehouse. At dawn, Mike had to handle another issue before the deal, so he tied Walter to a radiator with zip ties. After Mike left, Walter saw a kettle nearby. He planned to use the kettle's glass shards to cut the zip ties. After struggling to reach the kettle's cord, he accidentally knocked the kettle farther away. Just as Walter was about to despair, he noticed the cord in his hand. An audacious idea flashed in his mind. He first turned off the power switch, then used his sharp teeth to strip the cord. Pressing one end under the zip tie, he carefully put the watch Jesse gave him into his pocket. After preparing himself mentally, Walter turned on the switch, using the short circuit to burn through the zip tie. Walter's ingenuity once again proved the power of knowledge. In contrast, Teabag, who was also once tied to a radiator, had to bite off his own hand to escape. Meanwhile, Mike hired Saul to defend him at the DEA, aiming to stop their illegal surveillance. After Saul's professional arguments, Mike gained the time needed to complete the methylamine deal. However, when Mike returned to the warehouse, he discovered that Walter had already moved the methylamine.
Hey, Mr. White's got an idea.
Count to 3.
Mike, I'm serious. It's a great idea. Look, you get your $5 million, we both do it, and he gets his all right? Just hear him out.
Is that true, Walter? Everybody wins.